in your mind, in your experience right now, what are the 3 objections that a skeptic would have from giving the 4-hour body a try? In other words, essentially using the system in any one of the areas, whether it be body or sex or muscle or weight loss. Or, for example, you've got optimum sleep is another one of the chapters.
I'd say the most common knee-jerk resistance would be you're a 30-something single male, so I'm a mother of 2. How does this apply to me?
What would you say to that?
What I would say is at least 50% of the case studies in the book are women. And there's a mother of 2 who lost 117 pounds, working out 20 minutes per session 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. So there goes that.
So that's an achievable one. Okay,
Right,
good.
right.
So we've got the moms with kids who are way too busy and way too fat.
Right, or older men. My dad was 65. He lost 90 plus pounds of fat and gained 20 to 30 pounds of muscle. Okay, that's so.
I like that. All right.
There's your case study there. The second resistance would be I don't have enough time to exercise or pay attention to diet. In which case, I say it's the 4-hour body first. I'm like the whole point.
And let's explain the 4-hour body and what that means, because you've obviously taken a lot of guff for the 4-hour work week, and ultimately everyone who knows you is like, you don't work 4 hours. It's like I always said, he could. Right. That's part of the thing. What's the 4-hour body?
It's intended to be a minimalist guide to rapid body change, and so the minimum effective dose, which we talked about earlier, looking for the lowest dose of exercise, of food, not calorically, you can eat whatever you want in terms of calories, that achieves your objective. That's it. So the 4 hours in this particular case applied literally to one chapter. So the chapter where I gained 34 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks, I had 2 30-minute workouts per week. So it was 4 hours for the entire month-long experiment. But in general, it's just meant to be a metaphor for minimalism, not in a lazy way, but in a very elegant way. And I think elegant solutions work. The fewest number of moving pieces, the fewest number of decisions, the fewest number of changes for your intended outcome. Okay. And those would be the main points of resistance, I'd say.
Okay. So here's another objection that I can hear people saying, and you've overcome it yourself, which is the genetic objection. So why don't you talk a little bit about someone who says, I'm fat and I come from a line of fat people, or I can't put on muscle, or let's line up the can'ts first, and then let's talk about your particular genetic profile, because you went through 23andMe. I noticed that, right?
Yeah, I went through 23andMe, Navigenics. I did a lot of genetic testing. I also took muscle biopsies, so I had muscle tissue removed from my leg.
Sounds joyous.
It's not as fun as it sounds. To look at my genetic makeup, to look at my muscle fiber typing, and not only am I not average. Most people would say, "Oh, well, that means you're superior inclined." No. When I had my muscle fiber tested, the doctor, a PhD in South Africa, actually, very, very amazing myography muscle research lab. He said, "I'm a scientist, so I like to speak plainly. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to tell you." I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "You would have trouble finishing a 10K." And then he goes, "No, you would have trouble finishing a 5K. Okay. And we looked at the graph, and my results were worse than like the average American Homer Simpson, than a couch potato. So genetically, I'm not predisposed to gaining muscle quickly. I'm certainly not predisposed to gaining endurance quickly. Very, very average. So I started from a very, very average, at best, baseline. So any results that I've had have been through training, primarily. The other point I would make is that if genetics are the trigger, then your behavior is what pulls the trigger. And even the head of the Human Genome Project will be the first person to say, genetic determinism, where people say, "Oh, I'm doomed to be fat because I have such genetics," is nonsense. And if you look at, for example, families that tend to be obese, their pets tend to be pretty obese too. So it's like, well, have you inherited bad genetics, or have you just inherited bad behavior? And I've just seen too many examples to counter that argument. And certainly losing fat is very straightforward, actually. It's very, very easy, almost regardless of genetics. If you have type 1 diabetes, okay, maybe that's a separate story. Type 2 diabetes, different approach, but for the most part, very easy to reverse. When it comes to other things, like running 100 miles or putting 200 pounds on your squat or whatever it might be, that's actually a good deal harder than the fat loss. That's really easy.